After I saw Ford v Ferrari, I thought I'd have a little laugh on Rotten Tomatoes to see what they had to cry about. I had a good idea what they might be crying about in this film, but this is what you get. 92% from critics. So the audience says 99%, or 99% of the audience liked the film. I like the film. 99% is a very good result. 92% of critics like Ford v Ferrari. What is going on? What has happened to the critics? Okay, again, it's a good film. It deserves 92% of critics to say they like the film. I can't believe it. I can't believe that this film was popular with the critics, particularly the critics that are allowed on Rotten Tomatoes. So before I talk about the film, let's have a look at these critics. Who exactly is saying that they like the film? Well, we've got James Berardinelli. Well, we'll just go James. We got Ty Burr. We got Richard Roper. We got Kenneth Turin. We've got Joe. We've got A.O. Scott. Looks like a dude. We got Michael. We got Chris. We got Jared. We got Kent. We got Pamela. Well, we got Pamela there. And we've got Andrew. So a whole pile of dudes have reviewed the film. So, okay, that explains a little bit to me. How come the social justice warriors aren't complaining? Well, when you don't have any females reviewing the film at all, I guess you're going to get less complaints for this type of film. Now, we do have Pamela down there. Pamela doesn't look like a dude. Let's see what Pamela actually said. Ford v Ferrari is so much more than just a car racing movie. It's a poetic and emotional story of friendship, love, and family. At the risk of sounding very sexist, that sounds like a girl's review of this film. I don't agree with that review, really. I did like the film. She liked a lot of things, obviously, that I wasn't really looking at in the film. But nonetheless, another good review. So all of these reviews are actually positive. There must be some that are negative since it got 92%, not 100%. But there you go. Whole pile of dudes are the actual official reviewers on Rotten Tomatoes for this film. If we drill in a little bit more and look at all reviewers, we've got over 200 reviewers. Here's the first Rotten review I could find. It's from Rain Jokinen. I'm going to say that that's not a dude. Maybe it is. The picture's got lipstick on. Anyone who has watched a race, especially a long one, can't deny it can get monotonous. The same holds true for Ford v Ferrari. I would say that that is fair criticism. I disagree with the criticism, but I'm surprised it wasn't woke criticism for this film. There's a couple more here if we dig in a bit from David Harris. What's a dude? Ford v Ferrari feels like a throwback to the bloated prestige pictures of the 80s, all the way down to its USA First message. There we go. You can't say America First. There's your first woke message. Chris Fell, another dude. It's missing a soul. Well, not a lot of criticism there, but there you go. He didn't like it. And here's the last two I'll have a little look at from Cole Pinion. After Logan, it's hard to not wish for just a little more from Mangold. I'm sure your dad will love it, though. That's a little bit ageist. And Candace Frederick. Well, it's a lady with a man's last name. With a staggering 2.5-hour runtime. Oh no, it's a long film. You'd think director James Mangold would have delved more deeply into the interior lives of the two protagonists in order to ground their narrative in something other than adrenaline and testosterone. Okay, Candace. So, forgetting what these critics say, what do I think about the film? It's a good film. Okay, the film is good. You probably need to have some sort of connection to cars to like the film. I know some of the reviews were mentioning something like, you didn't have to just like cars to get something out of the film. I do disagree with that. I think the rest of the film is very strong. The relationship between the two main characters is good. All of the non-racing stuff is very good and compelling. I don't think it's good enough for someone that doesn't like car racing, though, or cars in a very loose way. So if you really aren't interested in cars at all, I don't think this film can be interesting to you. But if you have just a little bit of an interest in cars, and obviously if you have a large interest in car racing, you'll probably very thoroughly enjoy this. But if you have a little bit of an interest, then I think it is a worthwhile film to actually see. Without spoiling anything, the general plot of the movie revolves around Henry Ford II, who was running the Ford Motor Company in the 60s, trying to beat Ferrari in the Le Mans race. So Ford tried to buy Ferrari, and Ferrari kind of stiffed them and got bought by Fiat, and Henry Ford II was very annoyed at this and decided to just throw a whole pile of money at winning the Le Mans race. So it basically focuses on the test track driver, which is played by Christian Bale, and the manufacturer engineer, which is played by Matt Damon. Before seeing the film, I had a loose understanding as to what had happened at Le Mans. I knew that Ford didn't win to begin with, and then eventually did win with the GT40, very famous race car from Ford, and obviously in more recent times they relaunched a new GT40. I did know, or I thought I knew, that the people that won the race were two New Zealand drivers. Okay, I'm not really heavily into Le Mans. I have all looked it up after I saw the movie, but beforehand I knew one of the drivers was McLaren, who the supercar's named after, and the company was started by him. I couldn't remember the name of the other driver, but I knew they were both New Zealanders. And so Christian Bale plays an English driver, which throughout the film I wasn't 100% sure if he was the other driver that wins and he's actually playing a New Zealander. He in no way sounds like he's New Zealand, but that's what I wasn't sure of. So I had a rough understanding about what's going to happen, but I didn't actually know what was supposed to happen. So I think maybe I enjoyed the film perhaps a little bit more not knowing exactly what would happen, as opposed to someone that actually knows the history of what happened here with Ford versus Ferrari at Le Mans and actually knows what's going to happen at the end, okay? Because I guess that ruins the end of the film. I won't spoil anything here, but not exactly knowing what happens, I think, still kept me on edge to think, oh, I wonder if this will happen or I wonder if that'll happen, again, without really ruining anything. Now, why do I think the social justice warriors are up in arms on this film? And I'm really surprised of the reviews that we have here. All of the wokesters have been scared off, or they probably just didn't like the idea of watching it at all. I think I saw one black person in the film. I think in the Ford factory there was a black guy. I wasn't really looking out for this, but I think I might have seen a black person in the film. I'm not 100% sure. There might be no black people in the film. There is one female in the film. There may be a couple here and there scattered out as extras, although I don't really remember it. But there's one female in the film, and everyone else is a white man. The film is basically 99% white men, which is probably 100% accurate for 1965, 1966, which is where this film is based off. I don't know, 64, 65, 66. But in 2019, I know people have a cry about it. Doesn't matter if it's historically accurate. Where's all the diversity? There is zero diversity in the actual cast in this film, and I assumed there would be some fake outrage about that, but obviously not, at least not at this stage, not on Rotten Tomatoes. So not a whole pile of people, at least as far as the quote-unquote real critics go, they're not having a big cry about diversity. And the few reviews I went through here that were bad reviews, none of them mentioned it either. They just complained that, they didn't like the film, which is, it's fair enough. You can not like this film. But again, I did like the film. I highly recommend the film if you have any attachment to car racing at all. If you've got an interest in the GT40 or in the Le Mans race in the 60s, you probably have already seen the film. I suppose if you have a soft spot for Ferrari, maybe you don't want to see the film. It's not really focused on Ferrari. It's focused on Ford trying to beat Ferrari. But I think it's a good film that will appeal to anyone that has any kind of affection towards cars and motor racing. I wasn't bored throughout the film at any point. It didn't feel like a long movie, at least not to me. Everything kept moving, and it doesn't focus a lot on the car racing compared to what you might think, because the whole thing is around, it's based around a 24-hour car race. So you imagine there's just going to be footage of people sitting in cars and in cars a lot. There is obviously a fair amount of footage off that, but there's a lot not to do with it, which I think is what gives the film more appeal or less boredom. Okay, because I don't really like watching real motorsports. Okay, I don't watch Formula One or anything like that. Certainly don't watch it 24 hours of a Le Mans race. So it does keep things interesting. It's not just a car race. There's obviously car racing in it, a lot of car racing in it, but it's really very much to do with the drama around the Ford Motor Company and around the driver and around trying to actually build something that can perhaps defeat Ferrari. So there's a lot of drama here. And yes, obviously a lot of motor racing, but it's not just motor racing by any stretch of the imagination. And that review that said something about it's they want something more than adrenaline and testosterone. It's not adrenaline and testosterone. Go watch a Fast and Furious movie. Go watch that ridiculous abomination, the newest Fast and Furious movie, if you want to get adrenaline, testosterone, and nothing else. What was it called? I was going to say Cain and Abel. That's not what it's called. I can't remember the name of the two dudes doing the Fast and Furious Presents. But yeah, that's testosterone and adrenaline, nothing else. This really isn't. It isn't. Yeah, it's got cars in it, but that's a pretty outmoded way of thinking. If there's cars in it, it's only for men. Saying that, I imagine the vast majority of this is for male viewers. I'm sure when the statistics come out from the Film Association, it'll show a massive skew towards male audience. Next weekend, I think Frozen 2 is coming out, so Frozen 2 will probably smash everything at the box office, but because this has probably a fairly big male demographic it's pointed at, it's probably got a fair chance of a bit of sustainment, because the people that would watch this film probably aren't going to go see Frozen 2. So although Frozen 2 will absolutely smash it, I imagine, in the box office, it's not going to be taking away too many customers from this, so you may be able to earn a bit more money than might seem on paper. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.